Um,
Recording in progress.
yeah, exactly.
Got it.
So yeah, well, guys, if you are watching this, you have already read the book Journey, and this is one of the interviews that I am privileged to have with a good friend of mine named Michael, who's a Christian. He actually just started his studies. He's been there for about a week, so I'd love to hear about that too. But yeah, we wanted to hear from Mike just about his walk with God and how he has been navigating singlehood, some of the challenges that he's been dealing with through that and what keeps him going. Mike, I will give the floor to you. Say whatever you want to say, man. Have fun. I will just be here to ask questions and stuff.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
So, to get started, I suppose I'll give a brief introduction of myself. My name is Michael Neloms. I've been friends with Mitchell for well over 2 decades.
Long time.
And yeah, it's a very long time. And I suppose to give you a brief summary about my past in terms of disciplehood and my walk with God personally. I have been involved in church for as long as I could possibly remember. I was inside of the womb with my mother being at my home church. So I've been there. It's been integrated within my upbringing for a very long time.
Mhm.
Um, so I was I wouldn't say forced into it, but I will definitely say thrust into worship ministry very early in my life. Probably around like 6 or 8 years old, I would say. But throughout that entire time, I've had a lot of ups, have a lot of downs, a lot of things inside of my own life and inside of other people's lives that have dramatically changed the landscape of how my life has been going, especially walking in that direction. But to the Lord's credit and honor, of course, because a lot of that stuff was done and had taken place for his glory and his glory alone, especially. So that's just one thing to always consider when you hear the story, because it's gonna be a lot of God in it. But as far as my journey through singlehood, I hadn't been dating anybody seriously until maybe high school. I don't really count any of my like middle school relationships to be anything of importance, other than like teaching me how people work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think the severity of any of those situations really took place until I was in high school.
Mm.
So I'm sure a lot of us have kind of gone through the motions, and some of us haven't, and that's still okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But however, when you're going through high school, you meet somebody, you're having this fantastical time, and it's what most people will refer to as the honeymoon phase.
Mhm.
Because once immediately after the honeymoon phase, you start to really learn about that person and what makes them tick and their likes and dislikes. And um, when we're growing up as teenagers, it's not the easiest thing in the world to decipher off rip anyway. So that was something in my first relationship that really kind of opened my eyes to, okay, I really have to get a broader perspective on somebody before I can really involve myself in their life. And how that involves being in your own personal walk with God. I mean, he calls us not to be unevenly yoked. I'm sure that's a topic you're going to see very often throughout his book, because it's just that's even within our own friendship and topics and conversations about relationships. It's something he's brought up to me many times, to be not unevenly yoked. Um, and a lot of my early relationships for sure unevenly yoked. Like
Me
I
too.
hadn't even I hadn't even considered the thought of inviting my significant other to church, not up until points in time where my own parents uh were bringing it up, and like they were noticing, okay, well, yeah, you're out on dates and you're having your own time, you're going out having a fantastic, joyous, momentous occasion, and at the same time you're not inviting that person to what brings you joy on a weekly basis. Like, you go to
Mm.
church, you're in small group, you do all of these things, and yet the one thing that thing that brings you so much joy in your life, you're not sharing it with that person.
Man.
So that being involved in my first relationship, like, it completely changed the perspective. Now, will I say that I took my own advice? Heck no.
We often
That
don't.
yeah, we often don't take our own advice, even when we say it the first time. I had a few other relationships past that one, um, just to give you a time frame on how long that relationship lasted, it was about like 9 months, I want to say. And it wasn't, not that I didn't learn anything and not that I regret the relationship. I do not. I think it was a very important learning experience that I had to go through. And it was weird because that girl that I had met initially at that point in time, I'd met her in freshman year and we ended up dating in junior year after like, weird high school stuff going, like she was dating somebody that she wasn't dating somebody. I wasn't dating anybody. And like, it was just weird. It was really weird.
Typical high school, man.
Yeah, typical, like I said, typical high school drama that you would expect. But past that, I mean, there are a few insignificant relationships, but I will say that come senior year, that summer of senior year, I went on my third time missions trip. It was a mission trip that our church set up for the teens.
Oh wow, where'd you go?
That year I went to Peru, excuse me.
Oh wow.
Ica, Peru. Yeah. But my church, we have a missions thing every year that they have for the teens. They raise money the entire year, and then during the summer after school ends, they send all the teens with a few leaders to another country or another place to minister to people either in need, churches that need help, youth ministries, and stuff like that. So
wow.
I was involved in that, and we went to Ica, Peru. I had met a girl that was going to a partner church in Massachusetts. And I wasn't looking for a relationship at that point. I wasn't even interested. I was already kind of recovering from that first relationship I was talking about. And, some other interpersonal relationships with people that I had not yet been in a relationship with. And it was just a lot of stuff going around at the time, and I wasn't even home. And I was just in a completely different place. Yes, with people that I trusted and stuff, but it's a completely different environment, and I wasn't really there for a relationship. I was there to, serve the Lord. And it's funny how that worked, because towards the middle of the trip, I would say, is when it was expressed to me. That's what I will say. It was expressed to me that she had feelings for me. And I ended up talking to her about it. And everything was kind of cool. That I didn't immediately get into a relationship with her during the trip, but a little bit after, for sure. And I will say that was my first relationship with a Christian woman in my entire life, like a legitimate relationship. And granted, she lived all the way in Massachusetts and I lived in Florida. It was my first long distance relationship at that. So it was a very challenging thing, I will say that. But what that relationship specifically taught me is that when you guys are on the same, when you and your significant other are on the same perspective in terms of like morals, in terms of what else, like just decisions that you would make in the future if you were a couple, like how many kids would you want to have, what kind of house you want to live in, all that type of stuff, like that becomes, I wouldn't say more of a reality, but rather it's a lot, it's easier to comprehend when you're with somebody that shares those values. It's
Definitely.
not feasible. Yeah, it's not feasible to be in a relationship with somebody and then assume, okay, like they're gonna, just because I click with this person naturally, in a everyday, in a day-to-day basis, when we're just face to face passing each other and what have you, I think it's impossible to assume that that person is going to think and act the exact same ways that you would in like high stress situations, for example. That's something really important that I never thought of up until a little bit later in my life. When like I feel like the gravity of being involved in somebody else's life really hit me. But that was like well later. But that relationship specifically, I would definitely say opened my eyes to the type of partner that I wanted to have. Now that relationship ended up not lasting. Since long distance has its complications, and that's understandable. And I was okay with that. As a matter of fact, that girl ended up marrying one of my really good friends from my home church.
Oh, wow.
And that's a cool point that I would touch on. If, for example, you ever do get involved in a relationship with somebody that is a Christian and they go to your home church, but that relationship may or may not work out, sometimes you have to, like, even if you really, really, really want it to stay in that relationship and you want it to work, but the other person just, maybe there's something happening at home or something like up with their heart, you never know what the situation could be. But, and I would say that you would want to, in order to preserve a relationship, especially because I think that is important. If a relationship does not happen, like it does not connect the way that you want it to, it's good to keep a friendship. As I think that's something that a lot of people will tell you not to do in terms of a worldly view. However, I think in certain situations, definitely in certain situations, you just got to be very mindful that that person is a human too, and they felt a certain way about you the same way that you felt a certain way about them. And if you care about that person enough, you will value the friendship over anything else that comes out of it.
Yeah,
So
that's powerful, man. Yeah. Yeah, speak a little bit more to that. what helped
Okay.
you? Yeah, what helped you in those moments? Because like that's one of the things that you think about, like when we go through a breakup, like whether we initiated it or whether they initiated it, that is one of the most difficult things to go through. Especially, and what you're talking about is a really, really mature mindset. Like we just broke up, but I'm putting my friendship and my respect for this person and their walk with God above my
my own
emotions.
feelings. Exactly. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So.
I will say for sure, when I was immediately brought to that understanding that, okay, she's not going to be a part of my life and she's a part of this guy's life, and I have to see them every Sunday.
Yeah.
Like that, it came to a point where I was like, okay, I either do one of two things, because realistically there aren't any other options for me. I either accept what happened and move on, or sit in the bitterness of it and be jealous the entire time and look stupid. And and that's the reality of the situation is that those are the only two options, other than doing something completely outlandish and possibly breaking your testimony or something like that. Like the only two feasible options are that. And the first option, the former, is way easier. I'll tell you, it is way easier to handle over a period of time than the latter. Because I will say this, before I taken the time to be like, okay, this is the situation and this is how it's going to be, I did sit in a little bit of resentment. I mean, who wouldn't?
Right.
You're like, what? Why am I not good enough? Why am I this not even a second option at this point? Like, why am I just gotten brushed to the side for some other dude? But you have to also, you also have to realize that within those situations, God's preparing you. And he's not even just preparing you, he's preparing the other person for the rest of their lives. You don't know, like you don't know what your words how they could affect somebody's walk and their inevitable future. I could have said something to her that could have brought her like, maybe not back to me, but to maybe some other dude. Like I could have said something really insulting or like just anything. It could have been absolutely anything, and it could have turned her direction from the man that she's married to now to someone that she has no business with. It could have been something like that, and you never know what result your words or what they'll lead to. Rather, you have no idea. So that's why I think it is a big point to foster a friendship with everyone, and including people that you may have wanted to have a relationship with but can't presently. And it just kind of goes, that speaks to us kind of living a Christ-like life, because I don't think that Jesus would have ever, in like any facet, had been so dejected by another human being that he would willingly separate himself from them unless there was no saving them. I don't think that there's any reason that Jesus would have ever put himself in that position, nor do I think that he would take that action. I think that he would want nothing more than to have just make peace with that person and be amicable, because that's just the way, that's what we're called to be. We're called to be Christ-like, and we're called to live lives that uplifts other people, especially, and that brings people closer to God. And in order to be within his presence, and in order to do that, we have to fellowship. In order to fellowship, we have to maintain a positive attitude with everyone around us. It's not possible if you're just sitting there being bitter just because somebody's in a relationship and you're not, so I would say for sure that's how I feel about that, for like, without question.
Yeah, that's real. And I do want to say, with this specific topic of breakups or relationships, I mean, that is really challenging, but I think you're right on the money, is that these types of relationships can't stop us from being willing to fellowship. And I think that's as challenging as that is. Now, again, we're not talking about like a toxic situation where you're being abused, or we're not talking about that
something
type
crazy
of
like
stuff.
that. No, like I said,
we're just
I
talking
don't think he
about,
would have separated himself from the situation unless it was like severe, or like it would have to be dire. And me having a little disagreement with somebody, or somebody not wanting to be in a relationship with me, does not count as something severe. Absolutely. It just hurts my feelings.
And it's arguably hard for them too, which is the other side of breakups. Yeah, for sure. Dude, this is powerful, man. Thank you for sharing. I do have some questions here, which you've kind of been sniping them already, which is great. So
I can go on forever,
No, it's good. That's what we want, man. We want to hear from you and learn from you. So I guess the tail end of question number 2 is, what else got you through some of those challenges you faced with breakups and rejections and things like that?
Okay, now I will reference to my paper, because this specifically had to do with the topic. The moment I read the question, I was like, oh man, I literally just read, like, I wrote a 2-page paper about this subject, so we're good.
Nice.
But specifically, how, like, I've had to face quite a few challenges, especially in regards to breakups. Rejection, I feel like for me, it's a little bit weirder because I'm a performer, I'm a musician, so it's easy for me to take criticism, and then, like, even if I don't take the criticism well initially, I will take it and make it something else. I just kind of practice that with almost everything that I involve myself in life. But where breakups come, like, that's a little bit different, because out of all the relationships I've ever been, I will definitely attest to my most recent relationship being not only the most impactful, but the most what's the word? I guess I wouldn't say life altering, but like perspective changing. Definitely perspective changing. I was in a relationship with this girl for like 4 years. Met her in my home church. We've known each other for a very long time. And to keep a very long story short, our relationship was good when it was good, and it was really bad when it was really bad. Like, I can't really explain it to you other than telling you it was very toxic when it became toxic. But of course, it's easy to keep a facade in front of everyone, and like everything's cool, everything's fine, even to ourselves, kind of lying to ourselves in a way, and like completely disowning that toxicity, and trying to just foster in anything else that wasn't toxic, essentially. That, like, definitely that's something I will say. Lying to yourself, especially when you're in a relationship with somebody, trying to convince yourself of something when it is clearly the other way, is not healthy in any way.
I second that.
Yeah, I definitely did that for a very long time. It wasn't initial. I would say that it definitely wasn't initial, because she was a Christian, and there are times that we would have conversations, especially about our sin, and in regards to our relationship, so you can use your imagination. What else? Just general, like general stuff that would relate to like your moral compass, especially in regards to your faith and stuff like that. We've had those conversations, and I know she's a good, she knows I'm a good person. I know she's a good person, but we make mistakes. That's just the reality of the situation at hand. But I essentially got to the point where like it was just so crazy and hectic, and everything was just happening so quickly and all at once, that I feel like she just kind of gave up. She just kind of quit. She was like, I ain't dealing with this no more. I got other things to deal with. I have more pressing matters to attend to than to deal with this relationship at present moment. And she just ended things at where they were. Semantics aside, I was very hurt. It was not a very good time for me in my life at that point, because I'd already been dealing with a lot of loss, and that just kind of was the icing on the cake. Now, how I overcame that was a mission. It was definitely a mission. It took a very long time because I was beat up about it for months. I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to go out. I wasn't talking to anybody. The people that I did talk to, it was just like to mope about the situation and like try to figure out how to like handle my own emotions. It was a trek, to like, for a lack of better words, it was an absolute journey. But I did come to a point where it wasn't just my mother, it was also my father, my brother, a couple people that God has strategically placed in my life to tell me to basically like chill out. It really isn't the end of the world. It may feel like the end of the world, but it absolutely is not. Like the understanding that you put so much trust and faith and like what's it called? Just time and effort into that person and that relationship shows how much you care. And regardless of the circumstances, just because you guys aren't together anymore does not make you any less of a person. It doesn't devalue you. Like you might look around and see all of your friends still in their relationships and in their marriages, even having kids, buying houses, all this stuff that you don't want to get left behind on. Just because everyone else is having that and sharing that with the person that they will potentially spend the rest of their lives with doesn't mean that, one, it's not possible for you, and two, it's what's it called? Even if you weren't to get that, who's to say that that's God's plan for your life? You could God can use you regardless of whether you have a family and kids. You could be single for the absolute rest of your life, but you have to understand that specific situation may not be meant for you, but if it is, then God will offer that opportunity to you of somewhere down the line. It's not meant for us to pick and choose when we want to be satisfied or when we want things, because it's all in God's timing. We like the next day isn't even preordained to us. Like we aren't guaranteed anything. The only thing that we are guaranteed is that if we believe in Jesus, that he is the Son of God, and that he died for our sins, and we live fruitful lives in line with what he teaches, and to be baptized and minister in front of everyone else, like other than those guarantees, and that allows us to go to heaven, we are guaranteed squat diddly other than what, death and taxes. I would say that's the only other thing, I think.
I wish I could get rid of taxes.
Oh yeah, for sure. But
no, but that's
like, man, keeping those things into perspective, man. Like it's so important. It is absolutely the most important thing, because in every action that we take in our lives, every single thing that we do, it's so important to make sure that Jesus is the focal point. That that the holy Godhead is being made known to everyone around us, and that includes the people we're going to spend the rest of our lives with.
And
if I was gonna say, if you end up losing that person, it just happens. Like that happens. It's not like I said, not every day is guaranteed to us. That person, you could meet that person and they could die the next day. What that, as painful as that might be, you just have to be able to understand that that situation wasn't meant for you, and that situation may lead to somebody else understanding what God has for them in their lives. So
Yeah, right.
everything
No,
is
man.
deterministic, you know.
Yeah,
It's
no,
very
that's
deterministic.
it's very it's very freeing to recognize that we can't control things, but so much of our energy goes toward trying to control those things.
Trying to control it.
One
Yeah.
thing I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit more too, because it's a huge point that you said. You said just because you're not with that person anymore doesn't mean that that devalues you. Like that is something that I know I've dealt with when I've gone through breakups. I've seen multiple people
Mm-hmm.
deal with that. The breakup or the rejection hurts so bad because it makes you question your own value. So if you could speak anything
Yeah.
to that, like how did you get through that?
Oh, for sure,
What did
dude.
you hold on to with that?
So in my paper, I'll go ahead and reference it. I'll
Yeah.
kind of plagiarize myself.
Which, by the way,
So I
what
was
college are
still
you at? Like we didn't let people know where
uh
you're at.
I am in Memphis, Tennessee.
Mhm.
The college itself is called Visible Music College. If you
Nice.
want to go ahead and take a look at that online, by all means, you can see what I'm currently involved in. But awesome school. I'm having a great time. So I will go ahead and kind of read part of this
Okay.
so we can kind of get an idea here. Um, but I was still a part of the praise team at my church, and they had no clue what was going on in my personal life other than me and her being in a relationship. It was just I anything that I was dealing with, I wasn't really privy to open that up to most people. I would only generally open up to people that I felt really, really close to. Mitch would be an example. One of our really good friends, Steven, is another example. Like just people that I feel like if I told them something, one, it'd never go to another human soul ever. And then two, they would probably give me some kind of decent, like worthwhile advice in regard to any situation I'm dealing with. Just to, keeping wise counsel the best that I can anyway. Um, and the only other person that I would share that stuff with was my girlfriend at the time. For me, she was the person that I could feel free of judgment. Or she was a person that I could feel free of judgment from because she was willing to accept me, flaws and all. Even when I slipped up or if I made a mistake, she continually showed me grace and I felt safe with her. So no matter the situation or no matter how stressful things got, she was going to be, I knew that she was going to be there for me no matter what. And I returned the favor without a moment's hesitation until she wasn't. And that's where everything kind of started to fall apart because then you don't have that, that safety net. You don't have that blanket anymore. And when somebody is willing to, and I hate to put it this way because some people, it makes it sound a little bit more morbid than it is, but when somebody throws away essentially that time that they spent with you and they, kind of off it to the side, like this isn't important anymore. And they basically throwing it away like a used toy. Like, that scene in Toy Story where like, Woody is thinking about Andy through like, not wanting to play with him anymore. He's like, I don't want to play with you anymore. And he drops him, he falls in slow motion. Like that is how we feel.
Yeah,
We
it
feel
is.
just like that.
Yeah.
And like maybe to a much more grandiose scale, but definitely that is the best like illustration that I could give about how it specifically feels inside. You just your whole world is falling down and you don't, it's hard to give yourself value when it seems like somebody is not giving you that value by running away from the situation or the relationship or just putting you to the side and saying, I don't want to deal with this anymore. But what we have to understand, what we have to realize is just because that person doesn't want anything to do with you does not mean that God does not want anything to do with you.
Yeah. Yep. Say that
Like
again for the people in the
they
back.
just because that person does not want anything to do with you does not mean that God does not want anything to do, because that's exactly the opposite of what he wants. He wants everything to do with you. What actually he would want in that specific scenario, I think, is for you to praise him, for you to worship him, for you to get into close contact with him, because he's the only one that's going to be able to repair your broken heart. It's like, it's tough for us to realize that God is immediately supposed to be the place that we find that comfort in, because I don't think it is a common practice. I think it's a common practice for people to pray, but I don't think it's a common practice for people to pray intentionally. Whereas you're praying to God to give him reverence, and then, maybe bring up some other things that you want for through his will. Whether that be a promotion or a new job or a relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, kids, etc., etc. As like, I feel like it's so much easier for us to ask God for stuff than it is for us to ask God what he wants us to do. And in those scenarios and those moments where we feel like we have nowhere to go and we have no one to talk to, God's literally like, he has it straight out in a like near hundreds page book that we can just pick up at any point and read and be like, okay, this is what he wants for me. This is how he wants me to live. This is the expectation that he wants me, that he has for me in this specific scenario. Like, we have the answers. They're all right there. And it is our job for us to discern when and where those things are supposed to be in place. But when it comes to this specifically, when it comes to how pain, like any type of pain that you feel in your heart, first place you gotta go is him, because you're not going to be able to get it off your chest, and you're not going to be able to have any discernment if you don't filter that through God. Truly, it's just my personal opinion. It is in scripture if you want to go ahead and fact check me, but it's there, and I promise.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. That's a timeless, I think, timeless answer, but I think an often overlooked answer. I heard somebody say within the last couple of weeks that we know more than we do. Like, we have more knowledge than the actions we take with the knowledge we have. And I was like, wow. But that's one of those answers where I'm like, people probably know this. We know I need to run to God. We know the Psalm that tells us to cast our anxieties on God. We know Peter tells us to cast our anxieties on him. We know that, but how often do we do it?
It's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not easy. So thank you, man, because I think that is just a great reminder. Especially when we're in the middle of pain, like a breakup can cause. One of the things I mentioned in the book is that sometimes breakups are so difficult because you feel like your whole entire social network changes. It's not just like,
that is a big, that's a big thing. I mean,
yeah.
imagine me, like, just in the first example I gave, where I'm dating this girl, I'm no longer dating this girl, and then I see the girl and she's dating my friend, and my friend knows all my other friends. Like, it is, it is kind of weird. But at the same time, it's like, so okay, like, I'm how does that currently, other than maybe making me feel a little different and like having everyone kind of look at me weird, what is that really going to do for me in the long run? It's not going to do anything. Moping about it or worrying about it, it serves no purpose. That I just think that a lot of people tend, especially in those types of scenarios, it's very easy to look in the present than it is to look long term.
Yeah,
because you don't want to consider other perspectives or other people's perspectives or feelings. You don't want to consider anything past that present point or how you feel. If you can take yourself out of that situation just at the present time and look ahead and be like, okay, maybe me and her being in a relationship wouldn't have been a good thing, or maybe that, like I said, like, I think in my example that those two probably are going to have a very fruitful relationship, and like their marriage, possibly, hopefully, is uplifting to God and something that he would honor. You want that for other people. If you really care for that person, you want that type of future for them, whether or not you're involved in it. And that's just the perspective I feel people need to take when it comes to rejection or breakups and stuff like that.
It's the selfless posture that is, it's hard, but it's righteous. And I think you're striking that balance kind of really in a good spot, because you did work through your emotions. You're not saying just ignore all of that. You did
No,
work through them. You
do
did
not
have,
ignore it. Trust me.
and you had people you talked to, obviously God, and then close friends. I've done the ignoring of my emotions before, and that does not turn out well. But for what you're saying is, you're saying work through your emotions, but also think about what's ahead. Don't stay so stuck in the current situation that you don't have any hope for God working in the future. Yeah, that's very helpful, man. Um, yeah, we just got a couple questions here left. This next one's probably really easy. What role has Jesus played in all of this for you as you've been journeying as a single?
Provide, protect, all that stuff, man. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He been a mama, he been a daddy, he's been like, oh,
Yeah.
brother, sister, like you give him a title and he's it. No scenarios, dude. Because
Mm-hmm.
when like I think back to those scenarios where um I'm like by myself in my own meditation, and I'm just like, what can I do to take away this pain, or what can I do to like reduce how much this hurts me?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so reliant, or at the time I was so reliant on how I could fix the problem. Like, what can I do? There's nothing that I could have done, not in the
Mm-hmm.
slightest. Like, the only thing that I could have done at that time was get on my knees and break down. And it's funny because that's what God wants us to do. He wants it. He asks for us to, you know, to get on our knees in a moment of weakness and to like lift him up and give that to him. I don't think I felt any more liberated in my entire life than that night where I got on my knees and I just looked up. I was bawling like a little baby, but I looked up and I told him, like, just here, it's yours. I don't want to deal with this anymore. This isn't what you want for me in my life. You don't want me to suffer and wallow in this desperation that like, or this expectation that I'm never gonna be in a relationship ever again. Like, there's no one gonna be better than her, etc. Like, you get all these false things that Satan is feeding into your mind. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
Because you think that those are your own feelings. They're not your feelings, because you weren't feeling that when they were in your relationship, were you? No, you
Mm-hmm.
were happy. Everything was going perfectly fine. And because the situation stimulated your dissatisfaction, or it stimulated your not having what you wanted at that moment in time, you're upset. And those feelings of bitterness and anger and resentment, all those build up to you possibly make sinning like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really bad. And I
Mm-hmm.
will tell you straight up, there were many times where I was in that relationship with that person, and bitterness, hatred, anger built up into a sin that,
Mm-hmm.
it was just something that I couldn't control.
Mm-hmm.
And sin gets what that's one thing I will say, especially like, I want to make this very clear.
Mm-hmm.
If you let sin, relationship type sin, and obviously we're all big kids here,
Mm-hmm.
sexual sin, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, if you let that stuff like continue in your relationship without addressing it, it will snowball into something you will never ever be able to control,
Mm-hmm.
ever.
Mm-hmm.
You may have it tucked in your back pocket and no one may know about it, but God does. And he
Mm-hmm.
will, I promise you,
Mm-hmm.
will reveal it when the time comes and press you about it.
Yep.
And you'll have to answer to it. And
Yep.
it's not fun. It is
Yeah.
not fun.
And the consequences follow. And yeah, man, that's a good warning right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good
big
warning.
warning. But
Mm-hmm.
I will just I'll leave it at this. It is way easier for us to just, take a perspective of, like these situations, these situations and this problem that I have, like, I don't own it. Like, it doesn't belong to me. Nothing in this planet belongs to me. All of it belongs to God. I always have to give that to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be like, it could be in regards to your offering, your sacrifice, your tithe, your first fruits. It does not matter what it is. It's all already belongs to him. And including our pain, including our suffering, we have to give that to him. Like his son has already died on the cross to rectify all of that. What would it take for us to just be like, all right, you already did the work, I just have to give it to you, that's it. You know, and I encourage anyone that's listening to this right now to be like, you know what, I haven't given it time, I haven't given thought to, you know, just letting this situation go. And as I know it's easier said than done, but it's usually in those scenarios, all it takes is for us to just take that step forward. Yep. Because a lot of the times we don't personally want to let go of it. We just want to hold on to it and fester on it and ponder on it and hope and wish and pray, et cetera, when God's simply just asking you. He's already got the handout. He's just saying, just give it to me. That's it. That's all I want you to do. So that could manifest in a number of ways. You could have to just tell the person to, like, might have to confess it to the person straight up. I do encourage that. If you come with a heart that is seeking forgiveness, or seeking reparation for the situation, if you come with an attitude that is intentional for the situation at hand, 9 times out of 10, I don't think that person won't listen. There are very hard-headed people. I get that. There are people who just don't. They're super, super stubborn and will just not give you the time of day. Will ignore your texts. Will ignore your messages. Will just have zero to do with the situation past the point of them getting rid of it. And sometimes that's your cue to just be like, yeah, it's over and I have to let it go and I have to give this to God.
Right.
It's a difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of discernment, but you just have to remember that you're not alone in the process. You're never alone, even when you feel like you're alone and there aren't any human beings around you. You don't need human beings around you initially anyway. I would recommend getting help if you need therapy. Therapy is a big do it type of thing. Like, do not be scared of therapy. I personally have never done it because I feel like I don't, obviously I'm like the whole saying, don't knock it till you try it, but I feel like a lot of my situations were easily handled just because I knew the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and every time I chose the wrong thing. So it was more of a sin problem and my heart problem than it was, okay, I really need somebody to help me choose the right decision, or I have no idea what decision is right, I need help or guidance. Those are those types of situations I feel like, yeah, go ahead, therapy all the freaking way. But if you are choosing to do the wrong thing and God is like slapping you in the face quite literally with the right thing and you're not doing it, you don't need therapy, you need Jesus.
Right, exactly.
But I feel like that, like I said, it does take a level of discernment and spiritual maturity, but in order to get that type of discernment and spiritual maturity, you have to avidly work through that time, you have to work through that process. You have to grow into it. It's not something that people just get instantaneously. Like, I didn't come up with all of this stuff like an hour before Mitchie got on the Zoom call with me. No, this stuff has been resonating with me for months to years. So
yeah, for sure. And some of you listening are going to be in a very rare group of people who you do feel stuck in habits of sin, and you also may need therapy because you may be trapped in some more so patterns of dysfunction that are due to upbringing, or maybe due to things that you've endured as a person, traumas you faced, or pains that you have to deal with. Exactly. So you may be the type of person who feels stuck, doesn't want to be stuck, but it's like, I don't know what to do. And in your case, I can relate to that. And also I can say personally that therapy does help. This is good stuff, man. Last question here. What is helping you continue to rest in your relationship with God now? As a single man who's a man of God, who is a worship leader, what helps you today? What helps you tomorrow? What helps you as you journey on?
So, like I alluded to earlier, keeping a perspective of like, I don't own any of this. This is all owned by God. That's something definitely for me now that helps me keep into perspective, where my place in this planet is. It's not to, one day be a father and a husband and et cetera, blah, 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 blah. It's not all of that. That could be a part of it one day. But once I understood um my place in the world and what God specifically wanted for my life, it that I those things came a lot easier. It came easier to understand that, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if God wants me to have a girlfriend, he'll show me that eventually.
Mm-hmm.
If God wants me to have a wife, he'll show me that eventually. If God wants me to have a son or daughter, he'll show me that eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Um and heck, I don't even necessarily need it to have, like, at this day and age, we don't even need to have a husband or wife to have children. We can go adopt. Like, there are so many like possibilities that I don't think you would consider up front unless you like took the time to just meditate on it. And it's not as black and white as it might seem, um though it is in a way just the way that God designed us to be, like a man and a woman, do the thing, create more men and women. Like, it is the scientific process of how we reproduce.
Yeah.
It is something that we can't really escape, but it's not it isn't it's not mandatory for our living on the planet. Like, we don't have to do those things to live perfectly normal lives.
Mm-hmm.
um that is another perspective to have. Like, it's okay if I don't have it either. Like, it's it's almost curbing your own jealousy in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because you're gonna, as a single person, as a single Christian especially, because, like, I don't think there's a better place to foster a healthy relationship in than under the house or the eyes or the protect provision of the Lord. I don't think that there's any better place to have a type of relationship like that. And you're going to see that when you go to church, or when you go to small group, or when you have meetings with people and you go out with a bunch of friends. You're going to see people in relationships with their significant other, and you're going to have to be like, well, yeah, that'd be really nice if I could have that, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. I don't. Got to keep moving.
Yeah.
It sucks to kind of say it like that, but that is
Mm-hmm.
how you have to be,
Mm-hmm.
because they're having that. It's for them, and hopefully they're using that moment in their life to, show everyone else, this is how you should be. This is how we are, and this is pleasing to God. That's what they should be doing. That's hopefully what they are doing. And you put yourself in those positions, in those scenarios, and those surroundings and those settings where people are living fruitful lives and living in accordance to God's will, then you don't have anything to worry about. Like, what should you be jealous about? Because that they're doing the right thing. You want them to do the right thing, and if you want to do the right thing too, then keep it trucking, keep it moving. Be happy for other people. Be joyous that they get to be happy. Like, that was another thing that I think I had to come to an understanding of. Like, why am I jealous of that person? Why am I like so envious of what they have, when I should be absolutely like praising them for like being in the position that they are, or that they are in. And you'd be surprised at how that opens some people's eyes. Even like I know it sounds kind of weird, but I have like friends that are in relationships, both a boy and a girl, and I'm really close to both of them. And I like mention every so often, like, yo, you guys' relationship, like, it's, oh man, it's so cool. I'm blessed to be a witness to that. Like, you don't know how much of an encouragement to some people that is. And sometimes it's even a wake-up call, because they might not actually, they might be in a rough patch in their relationship, and they might have needed to hear that encouragement
Right.
and that little extra push to get them to where they need to be. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into it, and like, just your monotonous, random, just the things that you do in the monotony of life, just your everyday, could potentially impact um somebody else's future, and especially even your own, because the interactions that you have with everyone around you could eventually lead to your marriage, or et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. It all leads up to something.
Yeah. Yeah, man, for sure. And it's crazy how easily we compare ourselves, which then stops us from being happy for people
Yeah.
because we're automatically looking at our life and like wanting it to be better than someone else's instead of recognizing that God's being generous to them and to us, because they probably look at our
Yeah.
life. You don't know how many people who are married or who had kids who looked at us as people who were married without kids and be like, enjoy it, because it's crazy. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
dang, like I kind of want kids, but they have kids and now they're like missing their time in their life when they didn't have kids. It's crazy how our minds work like that. So um all right. Well, hey, we at the end, man. I just wanted to ask you to share with us kind of where we can connect with you, any music we can go listen to, anywhere, any places you can send people to connect with your stuff, and any last nuggets of wisdom you want to pass on. So
Okay. Well, if you would like to connect with me, I have Instagram, I believe. On Instagram, it is Michael.Neloms. I'm pretty sure. I can actually check right now. Make
okay.
110% sure that that's what that is.
Hold on one
Unless
second.
it's
I need
just
to go
Michael Neloms.
let me grab my charger right quick before my computer dies.
Oh, no, you're good. Let's see here. That's nothing. Aha, this is not. Okay, I got it. Wait until you're all plugged in, and I'll start plugging myself.
See.
All right, we good?
Yep.
All right. So Instagram is Michael Neloms, just straight up my first and last name, all lowercase, close together on Instagram.
Nice.
I mean, I guess Facebook too is the same thing. Just look me up, it's Michael Neloms. Don't add my dad because he's weird. We have the same name, so look for June. I might not have it as Junior, but I'm the younger one. The one with the prettier green eyes. Wink, wink. Um, and then SoundCloud, I believe, if you search Michael Neloms as well, it should just pop up in SoundCloud. Because the actual name of the channel on there is my stage handle, which is Cypher.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think that's gonna be super easy for you to look into on SoundCloud. So if you do find me on SoundCloud, it is indeed Michael Neloms. I believe I have. You can just space that in. Last name Neloms, Neloms,
Sweet.
and I'm pretty sure that's it.
And what we'll do too is I'll take these actual links and I'll place them in the show notes so that you won't have to type them in or anything. You can just kind of go down the show notes, click them, and you can go straight to Mike's work. You can go straight to his Instagram and connect with him. So this has been awesome.
And little nugget.
Yeah,
I would
please.
say the final nugget. I want to read the last paragraph on this reflection paper.
Okay.
And I think it'll put really cool perspective on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote, I'm reminded of Jehoshaphat's victory over the Ammonites, Meunites, and Moabites. I reflect specifically on how a simple act of obedience left Jehoshaphat's enemies beaten and dead at his feet. I look at what Jesus did for me and I realize that it shouldn't be difficult to leave our problems with God. At the very sign of obedience, God can and will respond as he's done so many times before and in the examples I gave. And when he does, it's our responsibility to worship him for it and give him the honor he deserves. When it comes from a place of desperation, God listens to it. And when we ask for forgiveness, he answers. So that's where I'll leave it.
Enough said, man. Dude, thank you. Thanks for your time. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording now.